Hi, my name is Jordan. Thank you so much for clicking on my video. I talk about royal history here on my channel, and if that's something that you like to listen to or like to learn about, please consider subscribing or sticking around and listening to me discuss Prince John of the United Kingdom and the Tsarevich Alexei. Again, thank you so much for clicking on this, and let's get into it. Two little princes, cousins who never had the chance to meet, living similar yet also completely different lives. It sounds like something out of a children's book. We'd expect them to meet up one day and lose themselves in the exhilarating journey they'd no doubt take together. However, the lives of Prince John of the United Kingdom and Tsarevich Alexei of Russia were not fairy tales. They were cousins, second cousins. That much is true. The boys were both royalty, a life of luxury at their hands from the moment they were born. Royal lineage and titles aside, it was the state of each boy's health that made the two so similar. Both were plagued with illnesses that sent their parents into a state of near panic, forcing them to make desperate decisions that would go on to be criticized by historians for generations. Tsarevich Alexei of Russia was born on August 12, 1904, to Tsar Nicholas II of Russia and his wife Tsarina Alexandra Fyodorovna. He was their fifth child and only boy. The couple had been praying for the birth of a son for years, as Russia's laws of succession meant that only a direct male heir could inherit the throne. The fact that Tsarina had already birthed 4 healthy girls did not matter to the aristocracy. Law demanded a son. When Alexei was born, for just a moment Nicholas and Alexandra thought that their prayers had been answered. However, that bliss was shattered when a nurse expressed concern for the continuous flow of blood seeping from the infant's navel. They knew then that their little boy had been cursed with hemophilia. Hemophilia is a genetic mutation that impacts the blood's ability to clot properly. It is inherited from the X chromosome, meaning it can only be inherited from the child's mother. A healthy X chromosome can either fight or balance out the chromosome afflicted with hemophilia, meaning girls born to a mother with the disease have a chance of being either a carrier themselves or completely unaffected. Boys, however, due to only having one X chromosome from their mother and a Y from their father, suffer considerably. Hemophilia means that any little bit of bleeding could be fatal, as the wound could not clot fast enough. A bump or a fall could lead to severe internal bleeding. Children at this time who suffered from hemophilia only had a slim chance of surviving childhood. They were often in considerable pain as well. There are numerous reports by members of the family that Alexei was bedridden and cried out in pain. The boy, as the only son of the Tsar and heir to the throne, was destined to have a rather sheltered life, but his illness only intensified the situation. He was constantly monitored by his parents, nannies, sailors aboard the royal yacht, and even his sisters to make sure that he was staying safe. Prince John of the United Kingdom was born to Prince George, who would later become King George V, and his wife Mary of Teck on July 12, 1905, during the reign of Edward VII, his paternal grandfather. He was the couple's 5th son and 6th child. Unlike the young Tsarevich, there was no reason to believe that Prince John would ever inherit the throne. John had his father and 4 older brothers to contend with, as well as any sons that they may have in the future. John may have been born royal, but he did not have the fate of the country on his shoulders as someone a little closer to the king in the line of succession would have. John seemed healthy at his birth, but it became clear around his 4th year of life that Prince John suffered from epilepsy. It was also believed that the prince could have been on the autism spectrum. Some of his behaviors documented by members of the family or staff have led historians to make this argument, but there is no conclusive evidence or medical diagnosis. He was a very lively kid who loved his family very much. However, as his health declined, his siblings grew up and the world dissolved into war. Life began to change for the boy. In 1916, his seizures were getting worse, and he was sent to live at Wood Farm, a small farm on the Sandringham estate. The royal family is criticized for this decision, and while we cannot know their exact reasoning for sending John away, we can discuss the societal view of epilepsy and the way in which children with disabilities were treated at the time. Epilepsy was not understood as it is today and was often considered a medical or a mental illness, which led to those diagnosed being isolated or placed in mental institutions. While the actions of the royal family and royal couple seemed harsh, it was relatively normal for the time. That does not make it okay, but in the historical context, it seems less heartless. The British Epileptic Association supports this by stating that the actions of the future king and queen were, quote, nothing unusual, end quote. At Sandringham, the beloved royal estate enjoyed by today's royals as well, John lived with his beloved nanny, Charlotte Bill, whom he called Lala. He also spent time playing with local children who had been vetted by the queen. These children are recalled the prince fondly for the rest of their lives, and one of them, a little girl named Winifred Thomas, enjoyed nature walks and working in the garden with him. Prior to being sent to live with Lala at the Sandringham estate, it became clear to his tutors that he was not progressing, and they were eventually dismissed. The royal family could see that Prince John was not benefiting from the same level of education as their other children. Aside from Lala and the children, his greatest companion was his grandmother, the former Queen Alexandra. She lived at Sandringham House and kept a garden specifically for John to tend to. The boys were second cousins, both descending from Queen Victoria. Their fathers, King George V and Tsar Nicholas II, were famously similar in appearance. They were two of the most powerful men on the planet, and by the time 1914 rolled around, they'd be fighting on opposite sides of the Great War. Before war broke out, the families visited each other when the imperial family traveled to the UK in 1910. There was a formal photo taken of the families together outside of Osborne House. Alexei is seen in the middle of the photograph, but Prince John is not present. It is believed that he may have been too young to participate in the photo, as only his oldest two siblings were pictured, and he may have also been too ill. One can speculate whether the two boys with so much in common ever met. However, John's absence in these photos seems to answer that question. The Russian royal family would never see their British cousins again, as they would be assassinated in 1918 during the Russian Revolution. King George V had the chance to save them when the revolution broke out, but ultimately decided against welcoming the family. He was afraid that their presence would spark revolution amongst his own people. I'm sure this decision, along with some he made in regards to his sick son, haunted him for the rest of his life. An interesting aspect about the two is how, while they were both clearly loved dearly by their families, the way in which their parents handled their conditions differently. Alexei was very much included in nearly every aspect of family life. They were definitely careful with him, but he was there. His sisters doted on him, but they were playmates as well. Alexei played with other children and accompanied his parents on official trips. Prince John, on the other hand, was sent away. He was still loved and his parents visited, but it wasn't the same. I think some of this can be explained by considering the cultural/family differences as well as the boy's place in the lines of succession. The Russian royal family was known for being closer and enjoying a more nuclear family than the British royals. Alexei was also next in line to the throne, making his attendance a little more important than John's would have been on royal engagements. We also have to consider the differences in the boy's conditions. Alexei only had to be careful physically, while John's seizures could be triggered by a multitude of things. And if John was on the autism spectrum, the royal engagements could have been a sensory nightmare for the boy. Another unfortunate similarity between the two was the fact that they died so young. Alexei was, as stated earlier, murdered along with his parents and sisters during the Russian Revolution on July 17, 1918. The revolution itself could be its own series of videos, but Alexei's health definitely played a role in the family's downfall. They kept his condition from the public, which further alienated them from their people who were already disillusioned with the royal family. They had also sought help from people like Grigory Rasputin, who was hated by distant members of the family and the aristocracy. These 2 points, along with a million other things, impacted the social climate and, among a multitude of other things, led to Alexei's death. John's death was far less bloody. He suffered an intense seizure on January 18, 1919, and died shortly after. His parents were not present, and he was found by his beloved nanny, who had been more of a caregiver to him than his parents. I couldn't help but find the similarities between these two boys interesting. They were each other's contemporaries, yet lived such different lives. This was such a pivotal moment in royal and European history, and these sick little boys were thrown into the middle of it with no hope of making it to adulthood. Thank you so much for watching this video, especially if you stuck around for the whole thing. 10 minutes is a long time, so I appreciate 10 minutes of your time. If you enjoyed this, please consider leaving a comment or a like or subscribe down below. Again, thank you so much, and I hope you have a good rest of your day.